I haven't felt this underdressed on the bima on a Shabbat and I don't know, wearing a t-shirt. I like it though, this is fun. Shabbat Shalom. This past Sunday morning, about mid-morning, I found myself totally unprepared. I was sitting on the floor at my home. I was wrapping Hanukkah presents. Because did I buy my Hanukkah presents during the Black Friday sales? Yes, I did. Did I put off wrapping them until right before the first night? Also yes. Also yes. And this Sunday morning, luckily, it was a rarity for me. I wasn't teaching any classes. There were no life cycles for me to officiate. My husband took our daughter to gymnastics. My son was at religious school. So I was home, alone, and it was quiet. And I finally had a moment to wrap those darn presents. And that's what I was doing when I got a little notification on my phone. I looked down, I get an email from the New York Times. To be honest, I ignored it. I thought it was an ad, like, sign up for the Times. I was like, no, I'm good. But then something was weird. I was like, wait a minute. That was my work email, the notification, not my personal. That's weird I would get it to my work email. So I went back to look, and I looked at the subject of the email, and it said, New York Times request for comment. And I read the email. He's a journalist, and he identifies himself. He says he's looking to speak to rabbis in the United States about the attacks in Sydney and what it means for fears about Jewish safety and rising anti-Semitism around the world. He said, here's my cell phone number, please give me a call. So I sat with that one for a little while. Now, I knew when I woke up that morning, and I rolled over and I checked my phone, I knew on Sunday that I'd be talking about that tonight. In a way, I was already going to, even before it happened. I was going to talk about the continuous and precipitous rise in anti-Semitism and the violence that naturally follows. It's by design. And I was going to tie it, into Hanukkah, so I already kind of gamed out that sermon, like in my mind. I kind of knew where I was going already before. But then the massacre at Bondi Beach occurred, and I knew that this would take on an urgency and a certain level of horror. We haven't had an attack like this since the last attack on a Jewish holiday, which was the last Jewish holiday, the last high holidays in the UK. There was a stabbing on Yom Kippur. But this is also different. In scale, it was so large, and so would our horror be. So I knew I would have to talk about it. I absolutely did not feel ready at that point to do so. So I called him, and I said, darn it, Jonah, you preempted me. I don't feel ready yet. I figured I'd have at least a week, or so to think before I had to say something official. And he said, oh, sorry. And I said, well, I'll do my best. So ask away. And we had an interesting conversation. Ultimately, he did use something that I said. It was kind of like a piece of a part of a quote, like the last bit of a much longer thought. I didn't actually find out that he used anything I said until much later that night, until we got home from the fireworks, here for Light Up the Night. We got home and did all the bedtime stuff, put the kids to bed, and then I actually had time to, read the article and see what he used. I'm very glad to have been included. And I stand by what I said, but I wish that you had more context. That's always the problem when you do media interviews. You can't control what they use. What got in was when I said, Hanukkah is the holiday we have to be publicly Jewish, commanded to bring light to the darkness, at a time when Jews feel most scared to do that, and it's right now, this Hanukkah. But what you're missing is what we talked about leading up to that. He asked me, he was like, as a millennial, are you surprised by the rise in anti-Semitism? And I went, no. No, I'm not. He's like, really, because of the war in Gaza and all that? And I said, Jews are the #1 target of hate crimes today. And you know who the #1 target of hate crimes on October 6th, 2023 were? It was Jews. Though the number and the violence of those attacks has increased by hundreds of percentages, what you're missing is when I told him that, yes, the amount and the deadly nature of attacks against Jews has increased worldwide since the hostages were taken and then the war broke out. But those people who hate Jews, I told him this, people who hate Jews will use any excuse to justify their hatred and excuse their violence against us. you're missing when I told him that to be a Jew in the world is to always have a wary eye out, to always be evaluating the safety of our synagogues and schools where we gather, something that most other people never have to give a second thought to, but we do. Because as long as there have been Jews, I said, there have been people who hate Jews. And you're missing the first part of the quote, the one that he did use, the first part where I said that there is a sort of terrible beauty and irony that at the same time we must be most vigilant and cautious with ourselves. At the same time we are commanded tonight. It's the mitzvah, it's the commandment of the holiday. Hanukkah is not about eating latkes, I said, and he laughed. He's a good Jewish boy. And I said, it's not about getting presents. It's the lighting of the menorah and the putting it in the window, persume nisa, publicizing the miracle. And what is the miracle? That in spite of all the forces who hate us for being different, who hate us for being who we are, who seek to destroy us because of that, despite that, we remain loudly and proudly Jewish. I wish he could have included those tales of heroism out of Bondi. Jews and non-Jews unthinkingly risking their lives, some of whom made the ultimate sacrifice. Boris and Sophia Gurman encountered one of the gunmen very early on. Boris wrestled the gun from his hands. Boris was an elderly man, and he delayed the terrorist, and he and Sophia paid with their lives. Jessica Rosen, a young mother of 2 and pregnant with her 3rd, she was looking for her children in the melee when the bullets began to rain down on her, so she crouched to hide. And while she was hiding, she saw a toddler, a little 3-year-old, who was alone and scared. And she laid her body on top of that toddler, shielding her. Jessica was injured, but the child was fine. And the father of this toddler called her a hero, and she disagreed, saying, my heroes are my husband and mother-in-law because they saved my babies. Chaya Dedan, just a 14-year-old, she was hiding behind a bench when the shots rang out. Can you imagine how scared she was? A 14-year-old child. And she was hiding when she heard a woman pleading, someone please help my kids. And she looked up and she saw 2 children who were out in the open with their wounded parents next to them. So she crawled out from behind the bench she was hiding behind, pulled the children to a safer area and used her body to cover them. The children were unharmed, and Chaya was shot in the leg. She resists also being singled out. She said, I don't feel like I'm a hero. I feel like everyone was a hero in that situation. I think that's what heroes say, Chaya. And of course, who can forget Ahmed al-Ahmed, the fruit seller and father of 2, whose bravery was caught on CCTV cameras. He's a Syrian Muslim man moved to Australia in 2016 after he got his degree. He was unarmed and he tackled one of the gunmen. Despite being shot twice, he disarmed him, saving who knows how many lives that day. He's recovering in the hospital, but he recorded this message, and he still struggles with English, and being injured, I'm sure, does not help him try to express himself in a new language, but you can 100% understand the deep feelings behind his words. He said, when I save the people, I do it from my heart. It was a nice day. Everyone was enjoying, celebrating with their kids, woman, man, teenager. Everyone was happy. They deserve to enjoy. That's their right. This country is the best country, but we're not going to stand and watch. Enough is enough. Ahmed al-Ahmed is a hero to the world, to the Jewish world, certainly. We've raised $2.5 million Australian dollars for him. He is a righteous among the nations. And at the same time, he is being viciously dragged in the Arab world. No one other than us is reporting this. I saw it first on Israeli news, because Israelis, like all Jews, hold him in the highest regard. Ramallah News reported about the Bondi massacre. 30% of the comments blamed Israel, somehow. But the majority of comments attacked at Ahmed. I wish the bullet hit your heart, one of them said. He killed a Muslim soul. He did not. He killed a Muslim soul to please his masters, the Jewish dogs, eternally in the fires of hell. Ahmed's family, they are proud of their son. We Jews, and anyone of conscience, are eternally grateful to him, but so much of his own community shun him. They hate him for being, well, a mensch, which makes his bravery all the more noteworthy. Ahmed al-Ahmed is a hero 1,000 times over. Those stories, all those stories and more, there's so many more, I wish they could have been included. The bravery and heroism of everyday people, men and women, young and old, Jewish and not Jewish, it is precisely when the world is so dark outside. We need those bright sparks of light more than ever, like the tiny lights on a Chanukiah to light up the night. I wish I could have included a conversation I had with a friend of mine. We grew up together in Virginia. She moved to Melbourne for grad school, and she's a teacher now at a Jewish day school. So of course I texted her to check in, and I said, I know you're hours away from Sydney, but how are you doing? How's the community doing? And she said, we're in shock, but we're also not shocked. Anti-Semitism has been skyrocketing in Australia for years. The very spot that happened was graffitied with anti-Semitic slogans. This past summer, a shul in Melbourne was set on fire with 24 worshippers inside of it. And a year ago, another synagogue in Melbourne was almost burnt to the ground. She said, we've been telling the police, we've been telling the government that we're concerned. They don't listen to us. I don't think they care. And in fact, there were only 2 police officers stationed at the event on Sunday night. We had more police, we have more security presence at our light up of the night with relatively fewer people and less public space. In the face of all of that, though, what she told me she's concerned, of course, more now than ever, with her literal physical safety, that of her family. It's such a small community, and they are surrounded by officials they feel are unwilling to take seriously the threats against them. But despite all of that, her concern is that she feels this strong need to stand up, this need to stand up and be proud, to affirm her identity to her adopted country and fulfill the true mitzvah of Hanukkah, the one that we are all commanded to do so, even or especially when we are scared, the commandment to be openly and unrepentantly Jewish, to mark our homes with the menorah, a symbol of Jewish resilience and resistance against all of those who rise up against us, to declare to our neighbors, hey, a Jew lives here. I live among you. I am like you. And I'm also not like you. And I'm proud of that fact. I would not change. I would not change anything about that fact. I will be here if you embrace me and love me. And I will be here even if you do not, because I'm always going to be here, because we have always been here. Like I told the Times reporter, as long as they've been here defiling our temple in the days of old, firebombing our synagogues now, try their hardest to wipe us out, as long as they have shouted, globalize the Intifada and death to the Jews, we have shouted back, Am Yisrael Chai, the people of Israel, live, and we always will. I hope you have a Shabbat full of so much shalom, so much peace. And a Hanukkah full of so much loud and proud Jewish joy. Ahmed al-Ahmed said, you deserve it. And think about it this way. If nothing else, it will make the anti-Semites furious for you to enjoy being Jewish, for you to love being Jewish thoroughly in your bones and expressing it out loud for everyone to see. Shabbat Shalom.